Hi, welcome to this workshop in which we'll be learning geoanalytics with Tableau, which is an industry-leading tool for data visualization. This workshop is the third workshop in a series of 4 workshops in which we are learning data visualization with Power BI and Tableau. And today we're going to be focusing specifically on how to build extremely rich data-driven maps that help organizations make better business decisions. Now, specifically, we're going to be learning how to build great maps inside of Tableau using a data set which is being created by the Seattle government, okay? So I'm going to give you a little bit more context in the project, and then we're going to explore the data set, and we're going to start building out some epic dashboards, okay? So what's the project about? Now, over the last few years, okay, if you've been noticing, Seattle has been having terrible traffic, okay? In fact, it's been climbing the ranks for worst traffic, and any disruption in the city can really cause hour-long backups, right? Every time there's an accident, that means there's traffic, right? And as the population increases, more accidents happen and so on. And this has caused the city to pay or lose, or per se, like it's cost the city almost $2.6 billion. That's a lot of money, right? Now, the good thing is that the government has collected data on these accidents for over 10 years. In fact, we have data today for 15 years, okay? And they now have a municipal infrastructure budget, which they want to use to basically go ahead and say, how can we reduce the accidents that are happening in the city? So they've tasked us to go ahead and deliver a business intelligence report for them that helps us tell them how they can improve their road design and also better distribute city infrastructure capital, right? So if we can tell them that, hey, there are a lot of accidents that tend to happen at this location, you should look into it. These are the types of accidents happening. It will help them make better decisions, right? They've collected data on every accident happening. It's now time for them to leverage the data and say, okay, we know these are the hotspots. Let's try and see how we can reduce the total accidents happening at these hotspots, okay? Now, specifically, they've given us a few things they want us to deliver. Mainly, we're going to be focusing on building a dashboard that tells them what are the addresses which have had at least 7 collisions in a year on average, okay? We'll tell them which location has, like for each location, we're going to tell them how many collisions have been there, what are the persons involved, how many vehicles have been involved. We'll also tell them what geographic patterns we're noticing in the data. We'll also tell them the total accidents per collision type. We'll also start to tell them what types of collisions we observe based on weather conditions, road conditions, light conditions. So if they know anything, they can do better for with respect to that. And we'll also tell them patterns we observe for collisions that were due to alcohol abuse, speeding, distracted driving, and so on. So lots of questions we want to answer here today. And to get started, what we need to do is we need to download this, data set. So download the data set, just click on this link out here. It's a Google Drive link. It's going to be for this file called CL Collisions Base Project. To download it, come to the top right-hand corner and click on the download button, and then save this file on your desktop or in your downloads. Now, I already have this file saved on my desktop, so I don't need to do it again, okay? Now, to get started, what you need to do is you need to come to your Finder or your File Explorer on your computer. Once you've done that, then you want to go ahead and select the file wherever it is on your computer. So in my case, it's on my desktop. I'm going to select this file and then I'm going to open it, okay? Now, let me go ahead and select Open with Tableau Public. And while it opens up, let me give you context on why I'm not giving you a CSV file or an Excel file today, okay? The reason why I did not give you an Excel file or a CSV file is because many a times when students tend to use this data set, it tends to take a lot of time to, first of all, import in, and many times the computer crashes or Tableau crashes. This is because it's an extremely huge data set. It has data for over 15 years, okay? So to ensure the file does not go ahead and like crash when you're trying to import data in, I've just already pre-made the file for you with the data, okay? And I've also gone ahead and set it up with 2 issues because I want to teach you how to handle those 2 issues per se, okay? The first issue is pretty straightforward, which is our map, which we're going to be discussing. And the second one is with respect to dimensions and measures, which we'll go into more detail very soon. So let's go ahead and get started with this map in front of us, okay? In the data set which we have each row representing one accident that has happened, okay? So every time an accident happens, a new row has been added into a data set, okay? And for each of these accidents, we have a lot of different fields, right? We have the address type, the collision ID, the collision type, the incident date, incident time, whether it was due to distracted driving, if it was due to speeding, or if it was due to, if the person was under the influence. We know the junction it happened at, we know the light conditions. So lots of columns for us, right? We can even see the total people involved. We can see the pedestrians involved. We can see how many fatalities were there, how many vehicles were involved. So lots of information is there for every accident that's happened. And for every row you see in that data set, okay, you basically see it represented on this map, right? So every dot out here is basically one accident. Now, Here's the problem. If you go ahead and plot every accident on this map, you're just going to tell me like, yeah, Joshua, it seems like accidents just happen everywhere in Seattle, right? Except for in Green Lake, because no one's driving their car into the lake, fortunately. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you that this map is super ineffective. Why? Because it's telling us that accidents happen all over Seattle, right? So we can't fix every bloody address, right? We can't fix every location. So what we want to do is we want to make sense of our maps, right? So we just don't want to plot every accident. What we want to do is we want to plot locations which are hotspots where accidents are happening frequently. So that's really the objective of today's session. How can we identify hotspots, locations where accidents happen very often? So to get started now with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new sheet in Tableau, and I'm going to do this by coming to the bottom bar and clicking on the new sheet button. Now, I'm going to go ahead and basically get started by building my dashboard for the first question, right? So for this question, which we have out here, we can see that the first question says, which addresses have at least 7 collisions a year on average? And then for each of these addresses per se, we want to see the total collisions, the persons involved, and the vehicles involved. So let's get started with building this, okay? So to build this, because we need to show so many different attributes, a table is going to be the most appropriate visualization. So to do this, I'm going to get started by searching for the address field in the left panel. I'll drag address and I'll put it into rows. I'll add all my members. That's basically adding in all my addresses. Next up, I want to go ahead and add in total collisions. Now, if you search for total collisions, you'll be like, Joshua, there is no field for this, right? This is because there is none. What we need to do is we need to make something known as a calculated field. We need to add a new column called total collisions, okay? Basically a new field that calculates the total collisions that have happened for each address per se, okay? It doesn't have to be for each address, it can be for any collision type and so on, but we need to make this calculated field. So how would I make a calculated field in Tableau? It's very similar to what we do in Excel. Like in Excel, you make a new column. In Tableau, we're going to make this field. And to do this, we're going to do this by basically taking our cursor, coming next to the search bar, there'll be this arrow. So click on the arrow next to the search bar and select create calculated field. Now we're going to write a formula similar to what we do in Excel, which is we're going to first give our column a name. Okay, we're going to call this calculated field total collisions. And then we're going to write down a formula which says count D collision ID. Now, why am I writing count D collision ID? This is because each accident has a unique ID associated with it, okay? What I want to do is I want to count all those unique IDs, okay? And to count all of these unique IDs, I'm going to use this function called count D, which is count distinct. So I'm saying get me a distinct count of all the unique accident IDs we have on hand, which will give me the total collisions that have happened till date, okay? Once I've done this, I've written this formula down. I'm going to click on OK. And now I have my new measure out here. It's highlighted in the left panel. It's called total collisions. I'm going to drag total collisions and I'm going to drop it on top of the ABC column, okay? Do not drop it on address, drop it on the ABC column. Now we can see the total collisions for each address. Let's go ahead and sort this in descending order. To sort this in descending order, I'll come to the top bar and click on the descending order button. Okay. Now, next thing I want to go ahead and do is I want to remove the unknown address. Why? Because we don't know what those addresses are. So let's just get rid of the unknowns. Right click on unknown and select exclude. Okay. That's step 1. Now, we can see the total collisions for each address, but I want to know the total collisions or the average number of collisions per year. Okay. So I know that I have my data for the last 15 years. We've been told that when being given this data set. So what I want to do is I want to calculate the average number of collisions, okay, in a year for each place or each address per se. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and now create a new calculated field. To do this, I'm going to come to the top right-hand corner, not top right-hand corner, my bad. I'm going to click on the arrow next to the search bar. My apologies in the same. Click on the arrow next to the search bar, select create calculated field. I'm going to call this column or this new calculated field average yearly collisions, okay? Cool, or you can even type in average collisions per year if you want to write it that way. Next, we need to write our formula. So we're going to do total collisions divided by 15. Why? Because it's for 15 years. We have data for 15 years. So calculate the total collisions divided by 15. Divided is basically a slash. Click on OK. And now we're going to drag our average collisions per year and we're just going to drop it out here. And now we've got 2 columns. We got our average collisions per year and we got our total collisions as well. Okay. Next up, I also want to see the total collisions all time. We have that done. I want to see the persons involved and the vehicles involved all time. So how will I do this? Go ahead and just search for the vehicles involved field, drag and drop it on top of your table, and drag the persons involved as well. And if you want to, you can also go ahead and drag in vehicles involved and drop that in. Okay, cool, awesome. Now I want my table to occupy the entire width of this space. So I'm going to change from a standard width in the top bar to an entire view. Actually, not entire view, my bad. I want to use fit width. Okay, let's use fit width, my bad. Damn, I crashed Tableau. Give it a second. Just going to change to fit width. Perfect. Okay, so I have persons involved, total collisions, vehicles involved, average collisions per year. Am I missing anything? Nope. Okay, now I want to reorder my columns and I want my average collisions per year to be my last column. How will I do this? Come to your measure values out here. There's a measure values card. In the measure values card, you can just drag your average collisions per year, make this the last one, and make your total collisions column the second last column. Okay, so now it's all ordered correctly. Now what I want to do is I want to sort this data by average collisions per year. How would I sort it? So I'm just going to take my cursor. I'm going to hover over the average collisions per year column, and I'm going to sort it in descending order. Fantastic. So what do we see? The Battery Street Tunnel northbound, North Gateway, and Battery Street Tunnel southbound, and Aurora Avenue, what's it called? Aurora Avenue north between North 117 Place and North 125th Street are basically your top 4 locations that have like at least, quite a few accidents per year on average, right? Now, I want to make this more insightful. And to make this like entire table more insightful, what I'm going to do is I'm going to color code it. Okay. How am I going to color code this table? I'm going to color code it by basically taking my average collisions per year. I'm going to drag my average collisions per year field, and I'm going to drop it on top of color. Now, initially, when I drop it on top of color, my text becomes colored, right? And it's difficult to read this light text, which is blue in color. And I want my accidents to not be color coded in blue, but I want them to be color coded in orange per se. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and make this, coloring scheme a little bit better. To get started, I'm going to come to my marks card and I'm going to change my coloring from saying, instead of coloring the text, we want to change it to square. Okay. So now the square gets colored. Next, I want to change the color from blue to something a little bit more like reddish or like orangish per se to highlight the accidents. So we're going to go ahead and click on edit colors. And now once I click on edit colors, I'm going to change my color palette. We can go for a red color palette, or we can even go for, a red to gold color palette as well. Okay. And I'll go for a stepped color. I'll say I want to have maybe 5 or 6 steps. Okay. 5 to 6 steps is enough. Okay. So now as we go ahead and, color code this, let's go for 6 steps. As I color code this, we get these bands, right? So these bands really highlight the severity per se, right? So we know, okay, these locations have a lot of bad accidents. So it's really good at allowing us to quickly group these addresses into different severity areas, okay? Now, here's one problem that we've not yet addressed. We only want to see addresses that have had at least 7 collisions in a year on average, okay? So what I need to do is I need to go ahead and I need to add in a filter that says my average collisions per year must be 7, okay, or more. So how will I do this? I'm going to drag my address field on top of filters. Once I do this, okay, I'm going to click on the condition tab. And the condition tab, I'm going to say, keep only the addresses that meet the condition, which says we want to take a look at the average collisions of year. So every address that has the average collisions per year greater than or equal to 7 must be kept. So we are saying only keep the addresses that have the average collisions per year greater than or equal to 7. I mean, click on OK. And now this chart is much better because it's only showing us addresses that have at least 7 collisions per year. So far, so good. Let's go ahead and give this sheet a title. Okay, we're going to call this locations with at least 7 collisions in a year. We're going to go ahead and click on OK. And now we're going to come to the bottom part of our sheet. and we're going to call this our table. Okay, awesome. Next up, I want to go ahead and make a map. Okay, so this table is going to be one part of my dashboard. I want a map to accompany this table where if we hover over or select any of these locations, it can immediately highlight it on a map. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to create a new worksheet. I'm going to call this a map. And now to make our map, we need to take a few steps. Okay, traditionally, when we are making maps, we usually either use a city field, or we'll use a state field, or we'll use a postal code field, or we'll use a territory field, but that's not applicable out here. We want to know the exact latitude and longitude of the accident, and we have the columns for that. So what we want to do is we want to take the latitude and longitude and we want to plot it on top of a map. Okay, so to get started with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my left panel. Okay, and my left panel, you'll see that we have the latitude and we have the longitude, and these are being kept in the measures section, right? So latitude and longitude are being kept as measures. But what we want to do is we want to actually convert our latitude and longitude into dimensions. Why do I want to do that? We don't want to add up a latitude and longitude, right? These are more like dimensions. We're never adding up latitude and longitude and doing mathematical operations on them, at least not in this case, okay? So whenever we realize that, oh, we have got a field inside of our data set and it's been misclassified as a dimension or as a measure, we can convert them into a dimension or into a measure. So we can basically make a measure into a dimension and a dimension a measure by just taking two simple steps. Step number one is hover over the field or which you want to convert. In this case, I want to convert latitude into a dimension. So I'll hover over it, I'll click on the arrow for it, and I'll say convert to dimension. I'll do the same for longitude. I'll hover over it, I'll click on the arrow, and I'll say convert to dimension. The reason I'm doing this is because we don't run mathematical operations on these, okay? Now, I need to plot my map. So to plot my map, okay, with my latitude and longitude, every accident should be plotted on it. I'm going to take my longitude. Longitude is going to go into columns. I'm going to take my latitude and it's going to go into my rows, okay? Now we have a map in front of us that shows us all the accidents that have happened in Seattle. But there's one simple thing which I want to do, which is I want to remove the null values in the map. Now you'll tell me, Joshua, where are these null values? I don't see any null values being shown to me. If you look in the bottom right corner of your map, you'll see you have one null value. Click on one null and say filter data. Okay, now we have a map out here that's going to tell us exactly the total number of collisions that have happened, an address with at least 7 collisions and whatnot. So to get started, what I want to do is I want to only see addresses that had at least 7 accidents on average, okay? So to do this, I don't want my map to be super busy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my left panel and I'm going to go ahead and drag my average collisions per year field, and I'm going to drag and drop it on top of filters. And I'm going to say, show me addresses that have had at least 7 accidents on average, and click on apply. And now you'll see our map is a lot more clean, okay? Now there's still one more improvement I want to make to this map. I can see all the addresses that have had at least 7 collisions, okay, on average in a year, but I don't know which addresses have a lot of accidents versus which addresses don't have so many, right? So like potentially this address right out here, which I'm hovering over, may have like 15 or maybe 7, but I don't know that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use color out here to tell a better story, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the average collisions per year and I'm going to place it on top of color. Once I place it on top of color, I've got this blue color coding system, okay? I want to use the same red to gold color system which I have for my table. So I'm going to click on color, I'm going to select edit colors, and I'm going to say use a red to gold color palette, and I'm going to give 6 color steps, okay? Once I've done this, I can start to see the accident hotspots, right? Like this one is not as bad as the ones in red, right? So we know the terrible accident spots now as we start to hover into them. But there are a few things which I can do better in this map. Starting off with a tooltip, okay? What I want to do is when I hover over any of these locations, I don't just want to see the latitude and longitude. I also want to know the address. I want to know the total people involved. I want to know the total number of accidents or vehicles involved per se, right? So I want to see that information. How will I get to see that in my tooltip? I'm going to get started. I'm going to go ahead and search for the address field. I'm going to drag address. I'm going to place it on top of tooltip. I'm going to also go ahead and search for vehicles involved. I'm going to drag that on top of tooltip. I'm going to search for persons involved. I'm going to drag that on top of tooltip as well. Okay. And I'm also going to search for total collisions. I'm going to drag that on top of my tooltip as well. Now let's double click on our tooltip and start to go ahead and format this. So I'm going to take my address, and my address is going to come right at the top. Okay. Next, I'm going to make the address a font size of 12 just to make it stand out. And then for latitude and longitude, I want it to be on the same line. Okay, I'm just going to remove this spacing. And this is already starting to look a little bit better, right? In the preview, we can see it. Next, I'm just going to put persons involved in a new line, vehicles involved in a new line, total collisions on a new line, then average collisions per year on a new line. Okay, go ahead and take a minute to do this. Right, so we have all this amazing information out here. Now I want to put average collisions per year as the first value we see, because that's super important. Okay, and then we can put total collisions right below that. Okay, and potentially persons involved and vehicles involved is like, tertiary information. It's not super duper important. So we can actually put this onto one line if you want to. Okay, so we can have something like this basically. Cool. Now, we've gone ahead and made this extremely informative tooltip. So let's click on OK. And now when I hover over any particular address, I can see the full address name. I can see the latitude and longitude for it. I can see the average collisions per year for that address. I can see the total collisions, persons involved, and vehicles involved as well. Okay. Now, if I want to go ahead and make this tooltip even better, what I may want to do is I may want to go ahead and add in a bar chart to it that describes, okay, the total number of accidents happening per collision type, right? So I know a lot of accidents are happening here, but I don't know what kinds of accidents are happening. Like, are there rear-ended accidents happening? Are there sideswipe accidents happening and whatnot? So I'm going to create a bar chart, okay? I'm going to insert that bar chart into this tooltip. So to get started with that, come to the bottom bar, create a new worksheet, and we're going to call this collisions by collision type. Okay. So I'm going to now come to my left panel, and I'm going to search for the collision type column of field per se. I'm going to drag the collision type field into rows, and then I'm going to search for total collisions, and I'm going to drag that into my columns. Okay, so now we can see the total collisions for each collision type. And next, we're going to go ahead and say we want to make this an entire view. So it occupies the entire space available. And then we want to sort this in descending order so that it's easier to read. And then we want to go ahead and add text labels, okay, so that we know the exact value for each bar. So what we can see is in Seattle, just in general, the trend is that the most types of accidents that happen are parked car accidents, when you're banging into a parked car. Then we have angle, and we have like, side swipe, left turn, right turn, and whatnot. But rear-ended angles in parked car are the most popular. Okay. Now, what I want to do out here is I want to make this, chart basically color-coded. So I'm going to say I want to make it an orange color. So it's, kind of same with the theme of what we have so far, which is orangish. Okay. And then I want to take this bar chart and I want to insert it into my map tooltip. So now I have my bar chart ready. I'm going to come back to my map, and I'm going to double click on my tooltip tile in the marks card. Now, when I click on the tooltip tile, I'm going to come to the bottom. So where you see vehicles involved, I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to come and select this insert drop-down menu. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to say insert the sheet, which is my collisions by collision type. So now you'll see my tooltip shows me all the collisions by collision type. So we can see, okay, for First Ave Marion Street, what are the total collisions and so on, whatnot. I'll click on OK. And now when I hover over an address, I can see out here all the collisions. So I can see rear-ended collisions, the most common, then sideswipe, then, angles and so on. And we can see the same out here for Lake City Way. We can see rear-ended is very common out here. We can see out here it's a left turn accident is very common. Again, out here we can see its angles and whatnot. This makes it very easy for the government to then be like, okay, cool. We now know the type of accident happening out here. Let's take some precautions, add some measures, like, maybe add a stop sign, or maybe we go ahead and add a camera, maybe add some more warnings, that can help avoid accidents like this, like these happening again and again at these addresses. Okay. So we've made a table, we made a very informative map, and we've made a very nice bar chart that can come into our tooltip. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to put all of this nicely together onto a dashboard. So to make my dashboard, I'm going to go ahead and click on the plus new dashboard button in the bottom bar. And I'm going to give my dashboard a name. I'm going to call this the collision hotspots dashboard. Okay. Then I want to give my dashboard a size which is automatic. Right now, the dashboard's really small. I want to make it full size. Okay, automatic size. So I'm going to come to the left panel. I'm going to change my size from range. I'm going to make it automatic. Once I do that, I'm going to drag my table. I'm going to place my table into my dashboard. I'm then going to drag my map. I'm going to drag my map and place it into my dashboard as well. Next, what I want to do is I want to take this color legend and I want to place it below the table. Okay, perfect. Now, here's the problem. When I click on an address out here, it does not highlight anything on the map. So what I want to do is I want to make this visualization into a drill through filter, and I want to do the same for the map out here. So how am I going to do this? Keep your table selected, click on the filter icon, keep your map selected, click on the filter icon. So now when I select battery tunnel, okay, it immediately highlights that address for me. Of course, we have to zoom into it each time, but now we can see the exact location for it. Okay, we can see exactly where this accident is happening per se inside of Seattle. Now, as soon as I'm done, I can immediately zoom out. Just click on the unpin icon and you'll zoom out of the map. You'll come back to where you want to be. Now, I may want to make this map slightly better, where I want to show the exact street on which this accident is happening to get more context to my user, because it's all gray right now, so we don't see the exact street and the intersections and whatnot. So we may want to give a street view. How will I give a street view? I'll simply right click on this map and I'll select background layers, I'll select background layers. Once I select background layers, I'll select my style. Instead of light, I'm going to use my style as streets. Okay. Once I use streets, you'll be like, Joshua, we can't really see these dots super well, right? They kind of blend in with what we have in for streets. And I completely agree with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a washout to this map. Okay. A washout is going to make the map a little less bright per se. It's going to make my washout, approximately, let's say maybe 70. Okay. So we can still see the streets and we can also see the accidents. So once we zoom in, we can see the details about the streets if we really need to. Okay, and when you're out, we don't see it. So we can still see these hotspots. The hotspots stand out pretty well. Okay, cool. I'm going to unpin my map, and there we go. We've gone ahead and built our collision hotspots dashboard. If you want, you can go to a dark theme and whatnot. I wouldn't recommend going for a dark theme because it doesn't have the streets, so there's no use to it. Like, we need the streets, so go for streets with a washout of around 60 to 70%. Okay, cool. Awesome. Now we've gone ahead and we've answered question 1, which is a collisions hotspot dashboard. Let's go ahead and now focus on the next question, which is what geographic patterns do we notice in the data? So what are some of the geographic patterns we notice? So we notice that there are a lot of accidents that happen in Aurora, right? Okay, on the street Aurora, there are lots of accidents happening in a line out here. So they may want to figure out if there's any correlation between it. They can now go and look at the video footage and try and figure out what's happening. They can even take a look out here at N North Gateway, figure out what's happening out here, why there's so many accidents happening in a line out here. They can look into that. In addition to that, we can see, there's another line of accidents that are happening on the street out here. So Highway 99 seems to be having a lot of accidents in a row. And then even if you zoom out here and you come to Alaskan Way, for example, okay, not Alaskan Way, my bad, Rainier Avenue, you can start to see again, there are a lot of accidents happening in a line out here. So the government may want to try and figure out what's happening on these particular streets and investigate what's happening and then accordingly invest resources into the same. Try and figure out why there are rear-ended accidents happening out here, for example. Why are there left-turn accidents happening? They want to invest resources into figuring out why that's happening, and now we've given them the data for the same. Okay? So that basically covers, what geographic patterns we notice. So when we make a presentation to them, we can highlight that. And we can also see in downtown what kinds of accidents are happening if we hover in and try and figure out what's going on. Okay, now let's go ahead and unpin this map and create a new sheet to start focusing on the remaining questions we have. So we want to see what are the total accidents per collision type. We've kind of already answered that. Then we want to see what are the types of collisions we observe based on weather conditions, road conditions, and light conditions. So let's get started answering these questions. Okay, so let's go ahead, name the sheet, collisions by weather, or you can just call it like weather. Okay. Next, we're going to search for weather conditions. We're going to put it into rows, and then we're going to search for total collisions. We're going to place it into our columns. We got a bar chart out here. We're going to sort our bar chart then. So sort in descending order, we're coming to the top bar. Once you do that, then come to the top bar changed from a standard view to an entire view. And now we can see, most amount of accidents actually happen in clear skies, not when it's raining, which is very interesting. And we can add a text label out here as well. And we can color code this as well. So I may want to color code it. And one thing which you'll maybe be like is, oh, Josh, we can make it orange. But I actually do not want to color code it in orange. Instead, what I want to do is I want to color code this by the collision type. So I want to see what kinds of accidents happen when the sky is clear, what kind of accidents happen when it's raining, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for collision type in my left panel. I'm going to drag collision type. I'm going to drag it and drop it on top of color. And now I can see the types of accidents that happen based on collision type. Okay. Now here's the thing. These collision types have not been color coded super well. So we may want to color code them a little bit better. And we want to start to remove null values and unknowns because they are not super useful to us. So let's get started by removing the null values. Right click on null, exclude. Right click on unknown, exclude. Okay. In collision type, right click on unknown in collision type, exclude. Okay, getting rid of basically unnecessary data. Now we can see that, we have these accidents out here. We can obviously color code angles and cycles and whatnot based on whatever color coding system you want to use. But it now gives us a better understanding of what was there in our data. Okay, so we can see that about 23,000 of the accidents are basically like parked car accidents in clear weather. Okay, we can see the same for raining. We can see, okay, in raining, 6,000 of the accidents, that's the maximum one, is due to angles, right? So we can see the types of accidents that are happening per se, which is really insightful for us today. Now, what you may want to do is you may want to sometimes remove the very low level types of accidents. You can see, oh, severe crosswind, 2 types. In the last so many years, you only had 2 accidents due to severe crosswind, 6 accidents due to blowing sand, and whatnot. So for stuff like other fog, smoke, etc., they're not super useful and they're not adding to the storytelling. So sometimes we can just go ahead and click on the shift icon, or not the shift icon, click on the shift key on your keyboard or the command key, my bad, select command or control, and just select the rows which are not super useful. And the 2 ways you can go forward with it. You can basically create a set and call it other, or you can just exclude it. In my case, I'm just going to exclude it because it's not useful to the storytelling at all. I'm going to exclude it. You're just going to focus on these main weather conditions of clear or partly clouded, raining, overcast, and snowing. Okay, because this tells us a big story, which is what we're looking for. That most accidents happen when it's clear, and we can see the types of accidents also happening when the sky is clear. Okay, awesome. Now, what you can do is you can go ahead and take the same approach which I used to go ahead and see the types of collisions we observe for road conditions and light conditions. I'm not going to go ahead and show you exactly how to do it because it's kind of very similar to what we did for weather conditions, okay? So let's focus on question number 3, which is what patterns do we observe for collisions that were due to alcohol or drug abuse, speeding, and distracted driving? Okay, so let's go ahead and do that investigation. So to get started, I'm going to create a new sheet, and I'm going to call this accidents due to driving under the influence. Okay, basically either drinking, basically alcohol/drugs, right? Cool. Okay, now to get started, you're going to tell me that, Josh, we have this field called is under the influence, right? So can we use that to go ahead and build out our list of places where we've had these accidents? Potentially. So maybe you'll try and take address, and maybe you'll put address, and don't do this with me, just watch. Okay, maybe you'll take address, you put into rows. Okay, and then what you'll try and do, and this is where you'll get stuck and hit per se, or you'll struggle, is you'll take is not distracted driving, is under influence, and you'll try and drag and drop it on top of ABC. And you'll be stuck with this, right? You'll see null, 0, 1, N, Y. Like, Joshua, this is not telling me how many accidents happen due to influence, right? So we need to figure out a different way to handle the situation. So what I want to now actually show you is a slightly interesting data cleaning problem that we need to tackle. And that's why I have this issue in the data set, is I want to teach you how to do good data cleaning, okay? So if I just drag is under the influence and I place it out here, don't do this, just watch. You'll see there are 4 possible values. It's either null, or it's 0, or it's 1, or it's N, or it's Y. Okay. If it's null, means we don't know. If it's 0, it means it was not due to drunk driving. If it is 1, it means it was due to drunk driving or drug driving per se. And Y also means it was due to drug driving or, drug driving per se. Now, the thing is that we cannot add up Y's and N's, okay? You can't run mathematical operations, right? What's Y plus N? YN? No, you can't do that. So what we need to do is we need to make a new column in which we basically convert our Y's into ones, because zeros and ones basically are you can have mathematical operations run on them, right? I can do 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 and so on. I can't do that with my Y's and N's. So I need to convert my Y's and N's to zeros and ones. So how am I going to do this? Now you can get started with me. Come to the arrow next to the search bar, click on create calculated field. We're going to call this new is under influence. Okay, so it's basically a new column called new is under influence. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write some conditions to make my new column. I'm going to say if, okay, is under influence is equal to Y, then the value of this column should be 1. Else if is under the influence is equal to 1, then 1, okay? Else 0, right? So if it's not Y or it's not 1, then it has to be 0. And then I'm going to type in end to end my conditional statement. And then I'm going to click on OK. And now watch what we can do. Search for address, drag address into rows, add all members, and then search for new is under the influence, search for new is under the influence, and drag and drop into your columns. Now, sort this in descending order, and you can see where do you have your, basically your drunk driving accidents, okay? Where do we have the drunk driving accidents? Alaskan Way, okay? The Alaskan Way Viaduct, SB, between Columbia Street and whatnot. Then the Battery Street Tunnel, First Ave between Blanchard Street and Bell Street. So we now know our hotspots. We can now add in our data labels by clicking on the letter T in the top bar. Okay, so we can see the total number of accidents that have happened. And if I want to, I can also go ahead and, just rename my new is under the influence column just to make it easier for people to understand, because if they see new is under the influence, they'll be like, what is this? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and just rename this. We're going to go ahead and click on the new is under influence, and we're going to select edit. I'm going to just rename it. I'm going to call it due to, or like just be like collisions due to influence. Okay. Cool. Or driving under the influence. Let's make it even better. Let's search for collisions due to influence and just change that to collisions to driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Cool. There's a super long column name though. Okay. Now, what I may want to do is I may want to make my tooltip slightly easier to read. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on my tooltip. I'm going to go ahead and just remove the address text. I'm going to make my address maybe a font size of 12. Okay. And then, we can just say collisions due to driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs. We can make that 2 lines and put the number below it. Okay. Maybe make this 3 lines actually. Actually, 2 lines works. Okay. And maybe we want to make our number bigger. Maybe you want to make the number 12 in font size and make your address actually 14. And yeah, there we go. Much better. Click on OK. And now you can hover over this and you can see the total accidents for each of these places. Awesome. Okay. Now we can start to see a really good story. All you may want to do is you want to exclude your unknown, because that's not going to be really useful to us. Click on exclude. And there we go. We can now see all the addresses that have had accidents due to drunk driving, right? Or drug driving. Like we don't know what they were under the influence of. Okay. Awesome. Now, in addition to this, you may want to make a map as well. So I'm going to make a map with you all super quickly. So first, just rename your sheet 6. We're going to call it like influence. Okay. And next, we're going to make a map. Let's call this influence map. So how will I make my influence map? I'm going to first search for my longitude. I'm going to drag longitude, place it into my columns. I'm going to search for latitude. I'm going to place it into my rows. Okay, then I'm going to come to the bottom right corner. I'm going to click on the 1 null, I'm going to say filter data to remove the null value. Next, okay, I'm going to search for collisions due to driving under the influence. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this and place this on top of filters. I'm going to say all values, click on next. Okay. Actually, don't do that. My bad. I made a complete mistake. Please don't do that. Please search for address, drag address and place it on top of filters, and then say only show addresses that are greater than equal to, not addresses, show addresses that have had collisions due to driving under the influence that's greater than equal to, let's say, 7. Okay. So in the last 15 years, if there have been at least 7 accidents, okay, due to driving under the influence, then show me those addresses. Okay. And I can then go ahead and just color code this map. I can make this red if I want to. Okay. So we can even make an influence map if we want to learn more about it. And you can follow the same strategy we used to build the map earlier. You can go ahead and change the map layers. You can make the tooltip look nice and whatnot. But I just want to give you a general idea of how to approach this question. Okay. Now, what are some of the other questions we have out here? So you can do the same strategy, by the way, of speeding and distracted driving. Okay, I'm going to add a new sheet and let's try and answer the other questions we have on hand, such as, is there a specific month or week of year when more collisions happen? Let's check. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take my incident date column. I'm going to place it into my incident date field. I'm going to drag it into my columns. Okay, I'm then going to go ahead and search for total collisions. And I'm going to drag it on top of my rows. Okay. Now, what I want to do is, we can see obviously, like, over time, the total accidents have shot up and now they're also going down. But what I want to do is I want to see this by month, right? So how will I see it by month? I'll just go ahead, hover over like, columns. Okay. And I'll say, go ahead and show me the accidents by month. I'm going to say, I'm going to select month from the first section, right? You'll see month shows up twice. I'm going to select it from the first section. I don't want to see it like for each month and year. We don't want to see May 2014 and May 2015 separately. I want to just see May. Okay, so all the total collisions for May and like April, just, all of it basically added up together. So what do we see out here? We can see in January, it's 16,000. It drops down and then slowly, steadily climbs up. And then in October, we have the most amount of accidents. And it drops down, right? Okay. Now, if I want to, I can also go ahead and, make this chart better. To make this chart better, I can go ahead and click on the T icon to see the value for each peak. And I can also go ahead and select entire view so that we can see, okay, this is when the peak is, it's in October. Okay. So we can call this collisions by month. Okay. Now, if you want to, you can even do this by week number. So like this is what you do for week number. I'd suggest if you do it for week number, don't go for a line chart, go for a bar chart at that point. Okay, but still, I don't suggest this is the best one. Like week number doesn't tell us as good of a story as the line chart does, okay? Keeping it a month view is good enough. Now, next question. Is there a specific month or week when more types of a specific type of collision happen? That's interesting, okay? Is there a particular month when like a collision type, like, we say, oh, for that particular type of collision, it suddenly changes, right? What are the patterns we observe? So what I can do is I can just go ahead, search for collision type in my left panel, and I'll just go ahead and say, show it as a filter. Once I say show it as a filter, you'll see we have this filter out here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and come to the left, like not left, I'm going to come to the right, and I'm going to click on this arrow in the collision type card. I'm going to say, I want to see a single value drop down or a multiple value drop down if you want. And I'm going to say deselect all. I'm going to say, okay, let's just see it for angles, right? We can see angle accidents. They drop down in Feb and then they go up. And then again, it starts to drop down with time. You can see accidents related to cycles, right? When do they start to peak up? Start to peak up during the summer, right? In May, June, July, August, September. So we want to basically have our cops more on the lookout, have some warnings out telling people, hey, be more careful and whatnot, right? There'll be more cyclists on the street. Or maybe you want to see when do a lot of, let's say, rear-end accidents happen. Are there any patterns? We can start to see, right? Rear-end happens a lot in October. Okay, I'm guessing it's due to Halloween. I'm not sure. I'm just taking a wild guess. Okay. You can see when sideswipe accidents happen, we can see not too much of a difference, just the general like February, it drops down in Feb usually. It's dropping down in Feb, maybe most likely, because people are too scared to remove their car out because it's, it's snowing. Also, February has lesser days. Okay. And then we can also see the same for like pedestrian. When do pedestrian accidents happen a lot? So we can see, right, there's this interesting pattern out here where basically pedestrian accidents are like happening in the months of October, November, December, and then Jan, and then it starts to drop down. Now, what you'll see me doing right now is I have to go ahead and like each time I have to select a particular filter, and then I'm telling you all the story. But what if you want to make this into a report? How do you make this into a report where you can give some commentary per se? I'm going to show you how to do this right now. Okay, this is super easy. First of all, make this collision type like, filter select all for now. I'm now going to show you how to make a very quick report. Okay, so come to the bottom bar and click on the plus new story button. Once you do this, come to the story option out here, which is called story 1. We're going to rename this. I'm going to call this like collision type analysis. Okay. And then we're going to take our collisions by month sheet. I'm going to just drag and drop it out here. Okay. Once I do this, I want this sheet to occupy all the space available. So I'm going to come to the bottom left corner and I'm going to change the size from story to, like you see story right now is like a fixed size. I'm going to change it to automatic. Okay, so it occupies all the space available. Then I'm going to get started by changing my collision type to, let's start off by looking at maybe pedestrian accidents. Okay, and then what I can do is I can add a caption out here, and I can say in my caption, pedestrian accidents start to peak during autumn and drop starting February. Okay, so this is insight number 1. I can add one more story point. So I'll just go ahead and say add a blank story point in. Okay, or if I want to, I can select this and I can just say duplicate. Okay, and I can then just simply go ahead and say change my collision type from pedestrian. I can say make it left turn. You can say left turn, it's kind of the same throughout the year. But then we can say for cycles, for example, we can write something interesting, right? So we can say collisions with cycles tend to peak during, or tend to grow or increase, tend to increase or increase starting May and drop starting September. Okay, and you can also obviously go ahead and make another duplicate, and you can continue to do this. We can say, oh, we have this, like, we want to take a look at accidents due to, let's say, rear-ended, right? So you can say rear-ended accidents tend to significantly increase in October, okay, before dropping down to the normal. Okay, so we got this interesting insight out here, and you can start to add more and more insights per se, but you can use the story feature for this. See, stories are a great way to, like, tell what's going on with these charts and interesting patterns and insights you've gained. So this is really a good way to conclude our workshop. So let's go ahead and start to wrap this all up together. So I'm going to start by taking my collisions hotspot dashboard. I'm going to make that my first sheet. Then I'm going to drag my collision type analysis. I'm going to make that my second sheet. And then I'm going to take my collisions by collision type, make that my third sheet, make the weather sheet the fourth one, make my influence one the fifth one, collisions by month and whatnot. You can add that. Basically make the base map your last one, basically. That's what I'm saying. Cool? Awesome. Now come to your collision hotspots dashboard. And then what you want to do from here is you want to go ahead and save this to Tableau public. So click on Command S or Control S on your keyboard. Once you do this, it's going to say saving workbook to Tableau public. And if you need to log into Tableau public, please go ahead and do so. Okay. Now, my entire project is being published to Tableau public, right? So you'll be like, Joshua, great, fantastic. But can I see all the sheets? No, I can't see all the sheets. So how will I see all my sheets? First of all, to see all your sheets, what you need to do is you need to come to the top right-hand corner, click on the settings icon in your browser so you have this loaded up. And then just say show all sheets, okay? Cool? Awesome. Now once you do this, okay, you can say you don't want others to download this per se, make a copy of this visualization. Okay, I want you all to do it yourself. So I'm going to say no one else can download it, but other people can at least see it. Okay, so I'm saying you can show this visualization in your profile. And then I'm going to take this link and I can then always share this link with people online. So if I share this with someone online, let's say they open it up in their browser, they can see everything that we've done, right? They can see the collision type analysis. So they can start to see all the stories that we are seeing and whatnot. Okay. So that concludes today's session in which we investigated collisions in Seattle, and we also learned how to make extremely effective maps that help, businesses make data-driven decisions. I hope you learned a lot in today's session. If you have any questions, do feel free to send DubsTech a message, okay? And we'll be more than happy to help you out. Take care. Goodbye.